Welcome to Inside the Game on the National Soccer Network. Now, here are your hosts, Jonathan Turner and Nathan Wangler.
Good morning. It is Monday morning here, the last day of June 2025. Jonathan Turner alongside Nathan Wangler. It's Inside the Game. Our daily dose of soccer information, soccer news. Well, maybe. Sometimes we won't talk soccer at all. That's just kind of how it goes on this show. But either way, we're happy to have you along. It is, right? It's like, hey, you can talk whatever the hell you want to talk about. And that's the cool thing about our world. And, Nathan and I were talking here just a moment ago before the show started, like, what are we going to even talk about today? Because it's funny how it's like the last thing we talk about, right? It probably should be like the first thing we talk about when we first get in here in the morning. But it's usually like the last, hey, what are we going to talk about? Like 12 seconds before we go live. And you were just listing off a number of great things that happened here, over the weekend and over the last week in regards to soccer. And it's funny because we talk about preparedness, you and I do, right? Quite a bit about when it comes to preparing for, doing games. I had a chance this weekend. I did not do any games on Friday. But I did a game on Saturday, and I did a game last night. And I don't do as many games as I used to for obvious reasons. But it just gets me into this thing where, preparing, right? How long does it take to prepare? And we've covered this a bit on the show before. And I know, Nathan, you do a lot of prep work in your world. But we have a gentleman who works for us, Alex Johnson, who does a lot of games for us. As a matter of fact, his workload the last week has picked up. And he is someone that, to a fault, is going to be on you about information. And and to be fair, I think in some scenarios, Nathan, it might be like, oh my gosh, it might be overwhelming. But he wants his information. He wants rosters. He wants this. These are all things that everybody wants, right? I need this. I want this. No, yeah, of course we want you to have it. But in our world, we've talked about this before. We don't always have access to rosters. And so a lot of times you're like, oh crap. Like I called this game last night between Mankato United and St. Croix Legacy, and I could not tell who was on the field for most of the game. And it wasn't because I didn't have their numbers. I just couldn't see their numbers. Now, granted, that is when we talk about like us being remote, that is the downside. I have no way of knowing who is wearing what these numbers are on the field. I have no idea. And you're trying to find out. You're trying to see who number 5 is, if you can even see it, even if it's a 5. And then, like, on Saturday, I'm doing Chicago Nation, and, like, some of their numbers are easy to read. And then others, it's like they decided, like, whoever is printing the numbers decided to take the 2 1s and make them look as though they're, like, one number. So instead of being an 11, it looks, I don't know what. So I'm like, who is this? Is that 11? Is that really, in fact, 11? It's weird how. But anyways, the thing I've realized, no matter how much I prepare, I'm never fully prepared. And that's why I'm like, even in this show and then what we do here, I like the idea that the show will just kind of go whatever direction we want it to go, because I don't know, I like kind of just letting this thing kind of rattle off a little bit. But that's my perspective. But how was your weekend, Nathan? I know that the Whitecaps were away for most of the week. So what did you have a chance to do this weekend? Anything fun? Anything exciting happen in your world?
Nothing too awfully fun and exciting. I will say yesterday, so I had to go in and cover the remainder of yesterday's ball game remotely. My number one didn't realize he had actually scheduled a flight out because he's not in Grand Rapids right now. He's actually flying back tomorrow for our game when we return on Tuesday. But he had actually scheduled his flight an hour earlier than what he had thought initially. So he had to leave town. I had to come in and call the last 2 innings in my stained sweatpants and my oversized shirt that I was wearing, my Sunday fit, if you will, the laundry day fit. But they ended up winning 5 out of 6. Man, they're the best team in high A, probably history, with the level that they're at. And obviously the Tigers right now are the best team in all of baseball. So the vibes are immaculate. So, who knows how much longer we're going to have the collection of guys that we do have. Again, I know this is a soccer podcast. We'll get to all of that here in a moment, but 3 top 100 prospects. They probably could all deserve to be bumped up to the next level, but Max Clark, Kevin McGonigal, who's probably the brightest young bat in all of baseball, and Josue Briseño, who's like a copycat of Miguel Cabrera. I mean, he's from the same hometown. He's the same height. He's all these other things, the same raw power that we saw to Miggy earlier in his career, although physically probably a step ahead of where Miggy was at his age. So there's a lot to be excited about there. Yeah, I agree. Listen, the podcasting / radio world is one of those places where you have to allow the conversation to go wherever it can. And to your point about, not being prepared or being as prepared as possible, there are elements around what we do that can help ease some of that, but there is only so much you can do. And that's, I guess that's kind of where it's become important for me to realize that there's only so much you can control. And no matter how frustrating it is, because there's so many different elements you have to rely on in order to get certain things right. Like I remember doing that game against Atlas, Atlas FC in Flint City. I mean, when you're wearing triple digits, it's going to be hard automatically to tell who's who. And again, I don't know if that's just something they do in Mexico. I don't know if that's something that they normally wear triple digits. I've never seen that before in my career. That was the first time I'd ever seen that before in my career. So that's automatically going to make it a unique experience. Sometimes you have camera people. I mean, unless you want to spend an unreal amount of money to get an actual production crew in there, which would kind of take away from trying to grow and do more stuff, right? Because then that would only limit you to a certain amount of games, and that's not really going to help you grow as a business. Unless you want to get that many people involved in that many cameras, sometimes you're dealing with, setups when it comes to the press box and other places where you're so far away that either the camera can't reach the player quite the way you want it to, or maybe the camera operator isn't, quite on top of their game. There's that element involved. There's also the element of, the teams. I'm realistic to realize we're last on the priority list when it comes to getting ready for that game. Like getting me the roster, giving us the roster is last on the priority list. The stream always comes last. Okay. And it's a frustrating thing. It's something that obviously can get through to a lot of us. And I think as I continue to grow, as I continue to do this more, with that realization comes this realization on my end that, okay, I'm just going to do the most with the information that I have right now. There's no need in getting overly upset or anything else, or going off or crashing out about the fact that you don't have everything that you need, because you just sit back and accept the fact that, okay, I don't have it. I wasn't provided it. It is what it is. Like a perfect example, Union FC Macomb game had a little issue with rosters and stuff. So went online, pulled the numbers. Some of them were wrong, misidentified a few players, but and people can get mad, but I don't, at the end of the day, guys, we do everything we can to prepare. And you're right. I mean, if anything, and I know that, there are some guys that are a little bit more on the prep side, but I love prepping. I love game notes. I love figuring out the different stories around the game. I think that's what makes broadcasting fun in my mind, I think, is the stories. And I think that's why I do it. It's very much, it's like, imagine sitting around a campfire and telling stories, only this time I get to do it while a game's going on and I get to call the fun and exciting moments. I mean, part of what really got me into broadcasting early in life was, it was watching sports. It was following sports. Dad had a game on always, but it was also those days in the summer where we were up north and we'd be around the fire. And my grandfather is probably the best storyteller I've ever met in my life. And really just in a simple way. I mean, just his tone of voice, his smoothness, and his delivery. It's just so easy to listen to him talk about certain things. And I think I got a lot of that storytelling from him. I think I got a lot of that from his ability to do that, because it was almost better than watching TV or reading a book when you would just listen to him talk about things that, and of course, not always the most positive of stories. He was in Vietnam. He's been through a lot. He's seen a lot, but his ability to build suspense and just tell a story is so, I was just enamored by it. And so when we do these games, and especially in the soccer space, like, I love being a messenger for a sport that probably isn't isn't nearly as popular at a lot of levels than some of the other sports in the US. Like, I love being someone that can help kind of carry the torch for this generation of soccer media in the United States, where we're just trying to get this game to just take a few steps up, right? Take a few steps in the right direction. And I feel like I've done that with a couple of people in my life. I've done that with AJ, who runs the camera here at NSN. He's kind of a soccer fan now. He enjoys watching the game. He enjoys consuming the game. I just got him a jersey and a soccer ball, and we're going to have the boys at Midwest United sign it for us. So that's pretty fun. In a way, I kind of feel like I converted my dad. I mean, we were watching, the U.S. and Costa Rica pretty much the entire way through yesterday. Now, mind you, he switched in between the Tigers game because it just so happened the Tigers were on ESPN, baseball night in America for the first time since 2017. So it's nearly been a decade since ESPN was like, we got to cover these guys in prime time. So I wasn't going to get him to simply stay on U.S. Costa Rica, but to his credit, again, was flipping back and forth. Flipped off the game once they gave up that early PK to Costa Rica, and I was kind of scratching my head like, oh no, this could be the end of this experiment in the Gold Cup. But no, man, they were able to come back. So that was pretty much the entirety of my weekend. That's what I had going on. But like I said, when it comes to being prepared and stuff, you can only do as much as you can do, and that's where, it's not about you at the end of the day. And we always talk about that. It's not about you. If people are frustrated, if they come back to you, then fine, you deal with it there. But yeah, in terms of stuff to talk about, yeah, we got our fair share. We got our pick of the litter here today. U.S. men's national team obviously beating Costa Rica 4-3 in penalties. I think Matt Freese, we got to talk about that performance, man. I understand people are saying he's in the conversation now. And I think if he puts up a good showing in the next two games, let's say hypothetically this team goes on to win a Gold Cup, I don't know how much of a conversation it is anymore, as it should be a reality. But obviously it's not over yet. He still has a lot to prove. You have Guatemala, and then you're more than likely going to have Mexico unless Honduras is able to find their way through them. Arvson's comeback after the early PK, Tillman's miss and the reaction to that got me hyped up in my living room, just punching at the air, just like, okay, like this young group is gritty. They're mean. They're in your face. That's everything you would want to see out of the squad. But just their ability to come back after that early setback was spectacular. So we can talk about them. Jesse Marsch is back to making excuses again. I saw that post on X talking about how he said after the game, like, half the squad that he wanted wasn't there. And coming into the Gold Cup, of course, he was poking fun at the U.S. that they had guys opting out. Panama is out. We could also talk about FIFA Club World Cup too. Miami lost 4-0 to a club from France. And I know we've been kind of cheerleading the MLS a little bit. Like, the more success they have, the more eyeballs that are on the league. But the team with Messi just got smacked around. And then obviously the U.S. women's national team, the second least cap in the last 24 years, beating Ireland 4-0. So there's a lot of good stuff to talk about in there. I know I gave my recap video, my reaction video, which more and more people are starting to appreciate on TikTok. So I think they like it more when I freak out after a loss than they do when I'm happy after a win. But I'm just satisfied to see what that young group is doing, man. There's a lot of fight yesterday, and I'd love to see it. So yeah, plenty to cover today.
Yeah, we ended the show on Friday with a poll. We talked about it, and I want to lead into that because it leads into this conversation. You talked about Messi and Miami losing 4-0 this past weekend, and obviously getting bounced from the tournament. The last MLS side from the tournament. So we again and somebody actually Jace who was on our show here about a month ago, Cincinnati SC fan. There is this debate about the club FIFA Club World Cup, right? And about how the MLS and the clubs across the pond and how there's so much disparity. And so, good morning, Michael. We appreciate you stopping by. I did want to say this real quick. We are just 75 subscribers away from 10K. So, if yesterday we started the day off close to 200 away, and now we are, we're just 100. We're just 75 away. So, tell your friends. Let's get to 10K here by the end of the day. That'd be great. I'm not doing anything, by the way, for 10K. I'm not going to go out and eat a chip. That's the spiciest chip on earth. I'm not going to dance around and blow water all over myself. Just if you feel compelled, if you feel compelled to subscribe, then subscribe. I'm not going to put on a white T-shirt and douse myself in water. It's not going to happen.
Were you a Jackass fan ever at one point? Did you ever follow Jackass?
I think probably on some level. I mean, I never would go and pay to watch. If it was on TV, I would absolutely watch it. Fair. But to answer your question, I don't know if I'm a fan of it. But yeah, I mean, seeing a bunch of knuckleheads just doing something stupid like that's fun.
We need to get kind of like they had Johnny Knoxville return kickoffs against the entire USC kickoff team in full pads. We should probably do something like that to subscribe to celebrate 10,000. We're going to have you try and return kickoffs against the entire Wayne State kickoff team and just have them take you out. I think that'd be really entertaining. You'd have to sacrifice the body.
I'm not going to buzz my head. Did I say I was going to buzz my head? Did I? If I said I was going to do something,
I might buzz it for you.
But anyways, so I asked this question on Friday. And the question I asked was, if you were a young player, and to be fair, it kind of got me in a little bit of trouble on TikTok. I'll talk about that in a moment.
Ooh.
I know, right? And I thought I addressed it well. But yeah, the question was this. And if you want, Nathan, why don't you put it up on the screen? The question was, if you were offered a contract, if you're a young player in this country, let's just say, for argument's sake, you're able to sign a contract, so whatever that contract would be, but you are offered a contract to play for an MLS team and also a contract to play for a team across the pond in the Premier League. Again, all things created equal. I know that when I was talking to somebody about this, well, how much is the money? The contracts in their concept are equal, okay? You're offered the same spot. You're offered the same thing. Okay, and again, if you're being offered a contract in both, that means you're a pretty damn good player. So let's just put that out there, okay? All right, so again, if you are a 19-year-old Christian Pulisic and you're offered a contract to play for LA Galaxy and you're offered a contract to go play for Chelsea, what are you doing? And I told you that I thought that pretty damn close to 100% would say whatever, and I think I did dumb it down to saying I think 80% would make it. Would be like in favor of going across the pond. And in fact, that's what it was. 79% of the viewers, the people who took the poll, stated that they would take the Premier League contract. Okay, yep. 79%. And to be fair, I think if more people were involved in this, I think the numbers would be higher. And it's not meant to be a dig at the MLS. That is not the intention of that poll. It's just it's an indication of where we are right now and where we put the MLS in the pyramid, so to speak, or in the hierarchy of soccer in the world, okay? And it falls in line with what's happening in the FIFA Club World Cup. It falls in line with that, right? Because here you are, right? And I know that Jason, who was on the show with us, he talked about the disparity in pay and how much money is available across the pond. Yeah, it's stupid money. It's like the NFL money. Yeah. It's like baseball money. I'm sorry, but you're talking about a baseball player. One of the best baseball players in the game right now, who plays for the LA Dodgers, is who?
Yeah, Shohei.
Yeah. So, and how much is he making a year?
I don't know what the exact figure is,
But didn't
yeah.
they like do it in a way in which he gets paid like, and then it all like hits like later on, hits like later on, and it goes to Florida. It doesn't even happen in like Cali. Like he goes to like it's like moving to like Florida money, and so which means it's way more money. Like whatever he did, he negotiated a deal that like pays him like little amounts now and gets lump sums like later. But it's like worth like $400 million, some crazy dumb number to play baseball. I mean, to play baseball. What the highest paid NFL player right now is making $23 or $24 million a year, right? Give or take.
All right.
Right? To play 17 football games, maybe, if they don't get hurt.
Yeah.
I mean, it's dumb money. And Messi's offered dumb money too. He's making way more money than any other player in the entire league, and he's offered probably his own franchise, right? He's offered like his own franchise. So one day there'll be Messi FC. in MLS, and it's like and it's what's dumb money. And yes, does the Premier League have dumb money? Absolutely, they do. Does the MLS have even the same thing? No, they don't. But again, if you're talking about first off, if the Premier League is calling, you're not getting the money, that like a Messi would get, right? That's not going to be a thing, right? You're gonna get. You're going to get it probably sounds terrible to say, you're going to get American soccer money, across the pond. You're going to go prove yourself, make sure you're good, and then if you're good enough, then you'll get paid in your second and third and fourth contracts like every other player does. But I think the average pay here still in the U.S. for an MLS player, I didn't look it up, but my guess is somewhere under $150,000 to $200,000 a year is my guess. And so if you're talking about that kind of money, and what got me in trouble is because we're talking about the MLS and the Premier League, and we're not talking about the female game. And my point was is that the female game is already there. The key for the female game in the United States is whether they can stay there or not. Right. That's the thing for them. Like if we were to say, okay, if we were to do comparables, the Premier League is the equivalent of the NWSL in the United States right now, because every player on earth who's a female player wants to come to the United States and play here. Here, because this is where the best soccer is. Right. Okay? Yep. Now, they're going to go across the pond like Alex Morgan did. What did Alex Morgan do? She went across the pond towards the latter part of her career. Why? She wanted to test the waters a little bit. Carly Lloyd, I think, did the exact same thing. You have players who went over there when they were starting these new leagues up in the Premier League, and giving these ladies an opportunity, and it was towards the tail end of their career. Okay? And again, the NWSL is only, 7 years old. I don't think it's fully 10 yet. I don't know how old it is. But again, it's a league that's an area with that league specifically in the women's league in this country has struggled to stay afloat. Right? And now we have the NWSL, which is doing really, really good, and hopefully this league can stay around for 400 years. But that league has arrived. The best players are there. If you're a female athlete, woman soccer player in this country, you are aspiring to be in the NWSL. It's the best league in the country, in the world, and you're not going to go across the pond to go searching for a contract that you can have right here and stay here when you can play the best soccer. Again, if you're talking about the soccer alone, not the money. Money's one component of this. But if you're an athlete who wants to play at the best, in the best environment, the highest levels in the world, and money is obviously part of that equation, you're not going to go across the pond for, nothing. But if you're talking about playing to giving you the best chance to make the most money and to get the most out of what you're doing, it would absolutely be going across the pond to the Premier League. No question, no doubt about it. Yeah. If you offer me that contract, and I grew up watching the MLS as a teenager, watching it flourish, watching it grow, absolutely would go across the pond. And I don't think you'd be hard pressed to find, I think, a young soccer player in this country that would say, yeah, I don't think so. Because what are they grown up watching? They've grown up watching the MLS, but they've also grown up watching the Premier League and watching the fans, watching, the Champions League, watching all of this across the pond. And to say that 8 out of 10 people are young soccer players want to do that, I think it should be more like 9 out of 10, but we'll settle with what the audience did in the polls here over the weekend.
Yeah. Well, and it's a couple of different things, right? They want to play with the best. Okay. This is the men's side of the game. Okay. The women's side of the game, you're right. The best talent is here in the United States, and they want to come here. So I think when you were talking about that on social media, I think at the beginning of the video, you said boys and girls. And so I think that's where kind of the confusion came into play with maybe people on social, because they're like, whoa, wait a minute. Like, there's no rush for people in the women's soccer game in the United States to go anywhere else in the world, because the NWSL right now is the standard, right? They have the best collection of players in the world. And you talk about soccer on an international scale. I mean, we rattled off back-to-back World Cups, obviously got bounced out of the last one, but in terms of, who's the best soccer playing country in the world on the women's side, I mean, even yesterday, like when we have one of our youngest squads in over 2 decades, nearly 2.5 decades, they're still good enough for a 4-0 shutout and really handled that game against Ireland. It was never really any question. So, but yet over on the men's side, we have one of our youngest teams, and we're watching them battle it out against Costa Rica. Now, Costa Rica is a decent side, but like I'm saying, this is where so I'm just talking about just the men's side, okay? Just for now. Because I do think it's important that we cover more of the women's side of soccer. I do think it's important that I think sometimes we take them for granted, especially the women's national team. Like, we're just like, yeah, they're good. There's no real storylines around that team because they're simply just going to go out and win. But I don't think that's fair. So I do think it's important that we mention that. But the men's side, number one, you want to play with the best. Okay, so you want to play with the best, highest level talent possible. And of course, like, why would you ever want to sell yourself short in that regard? So if you're a young player, we know this intrinsically, right? The MLS is not the best, most talented league in the world. The comparison that I would make it to, in a lot of ways, coming from the baseball sphere, it's kind of like AAA. Right? Because you have a combination of players who probably didn't pan out overseas. Maybe they got an opportunity once upon a time. Maybe they played for this club or that club, but they couldn't stick it out. They couldn't sustain a career in those higher leagues overseas. And now I say overseas, there's a lot of different leagues and stuff overseas, but I think Europe is kind of the focus when we talk about this conversation in particular, because again, the conversation is the MLS ever going to catch up? Ever going to be on even footing? Are we ever going to get some of those top players to come here and play their prime years, as opposed to doing exactly what you just mentioned in going over the seas? In recent years, we've seen multiple U.S. women's national team players joining European clubs, so is shifting in the women's game. And I think that's true, Michael. And I think that comes back to the other point I was going to make, is the popularity of the game. You want to be in a place where the game itself stands alone. Here in the U.S., it doesn't stand alone. It's buried under a lot of other things that are going on. Baseball during this time of year. I mean, heck, there's still a lot of, in terms of cultural relevance, you could say it's third or maybe fourth on the list. But you go overseas and it's everything. And we've talked about that. And people have even gotten into our comment section. They're like, you can't compare it. I'm like, no one's comparing it. No one on this show or anywhere else has ever compared the cultural significance of soccer, football here in the United States as compared to wherever else it is in the world, especially Europe. So to that end, that's what's so attractive to these players about going over there. Here in the U.S., you might play in front of a half-empty stadium. You might play in front of a stadium that isn't even half full. But you're the best players in the world. So why would you not want to go play, even if it meant sacrificing a little bit of that money? Why would you not want to go play in front of a crowd or in an environment where it lives, breathes, and dies soccer? Because you're going to have good crowds. You're going to have that rowdiness. You're going to be in a place where it stands alone. Like I said, it's kind of like, if you're a baseball player, and you're on the back end, right? And I know that league minimum in the MLB is probably much higher than it is anywhere else. But I would venture to say that there are probably some guys in Major League Baseball right now that could go to other countries and make just as much as the league minimum, if not more, if they're right on that back line. But why would you want to do that if you have the opportunity to play in front of a Wrigley Field where it's packed out on a Saturday night, or at a PNC Park, or in San Diego at Petco, on a Saturday with, Dodgers, Padres, and packed out and people going crazy. I mean, that's the environment you want to be a part of. So the best talent is here, but we have seen more players go overseas simply because, again, the popularity of the game itself stands alone. And so when it comes to the MLS conversation, some people thought that was a ridiculous question, but that kind of answers our question, right? I think you said LA Galaxy or Liverpool, like weighing like those two contracts, which one would you want? And these people in the comment section are like, well, obviously Liverpool. Like, why is this even a question? Why are you even asking this? And that's exactly our point. That's exactly our point, because you had kind of stood up and said the MLS will never, and again, never is a strong word, but the MLS will never catch up to the Premier League or some of the other top leagues, whether that be Bundesliga, whether it be Serie A, or any of these other leagues across the way. And again, never is a strong word. And Michael said, 20, 30 years down the line, you never know, right? Like, economically, things change, other things shift. You never know. So I think never is a strong word in this instance, but does it catch up? I mean, right now, kind of the way those comments were telling us, and the way obviously the poll went, yeah, they want to go overseas, and for good reason they want to go overseas.
And we have to, like I said, if we do this poll every year and ask this question, I think that will tell us where things are at. It's the players, right? It's not so much about what we think. We all day long, Clint Dempsey, you, me, Tim Howard, Landon Don, Alexi Lalas, we could all go up on and sit there and talk on a camera and for 45 minutes and talk about how great this league is, that league is, and all that. At the end of the day, the people who are playing in it, the ones who are making the decisions to play in these leagues and sign these contracts and go out there and give it what they can, will determine, the hierarchy, right? Will determine the importance of one league over the other. And if we ask this question a year from now, if it goes from 80%, it goes to 70. 2 years from now, it's at 50. And 3 years, you can go down. If it starts to shift, then that's how you know, because the players are the ones that are saying, no, I want to play. I want to stay here. I want to stay here. And when it comes to the women's game, there are a lot of women that leave the United States because they cannot make a team here. They cannot make they want to play professional soccer. And it's no different than in basketball, right? You think about on the men's side and women's side in basketball. You have the NBA and the WNBA, but you have the G League. But if you want to try and go and make a run at it professionally, you're going to go across the pond. You're going to go play in Spain. You're going to go maybe play in some of the other leagues around the world that can give you a chance to play professionally and use that as a way to maybe catapult you into the NBA. All right, and you see it all the time. And what do we see with women's soccer players? They go overseas. They go to Spain. They go to England. They play in the 4th division team, where they make nothing, but they have, everything's taken care of for them. They don't make any money, but they're playing professional soccer, and they're doing so in big environments. And they're trying to use that to catapult themselves back here, build their resume. And so, which is, again, you could argue that players are in the MLS trying to give themselves a name so they could get asked to get a contract to go across the Premier League. They're looking at
and you have guys who are taking their first step, like it's a stepping stone towards what they want to do. Yeah,
absolutely. So I think that's an important thing, and so it's just an indication of where the MLS is in relation to that of the Premier League and to leagues across the pond. And I know that someone asked, well, what about the leagues in South America? What about the leagues in Brazil? Okay.
Brazil's,
I mean, when I say across the pond, it's anywhere but here. I mean, it's anywhere. Yeah, exactly. It's anywhere but here. I mean, we can argue the Premier League is and Champions League and we can argue which league, and again, I don't know which league is like the league. I would say that if you're talking about from a standpoint of notoriety and history, I would argue that the Premier League is in fact that league. And you also happen to have other leagues that are like that, but I think the Premier League is the one. But again, that I think that's probably something we should probably ask our viewers. Like, hey, what is the best league in the world right now, is it the Premier League? Is it Bundesliga? Is it Liga MX? What is it, right? And let them decide which one is the best. But we're the MLS is so far away from all of them, and it's specifically outside of like North America, right? And the Americas, because I know that's like something you have to say, right? Because we're like it's North America, South America, Central America, the Americas. Where's the MLS fit into that? And you can maybe have an argument about maybe they might be the best league in between that and maybe Mexico and leagues like that. But I would still argue that probably not be the case. Because fan bases, because of the size of the team, the contracts and where's soccer in Mexico as far as its popularity? Number one, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't know if there's any other sport, in Mexico that would eclipse, that of soccer. And so, from my perspective, Premier League would be it. Yeah. And so when we're talking about 30 years from now, again, there'd have to be some significant things that would have to happen in that environment that would allow a league like the MLS to even like come close to matching up but do I think that there'll be a time period where players don't need to go across the pond anymore? Yeah, absolutely. Do I think there'll be a time when players will want to come here in their prime? Yeah, I do actually. Because as a league grows, so will the revenue. And so if you're a player who is the best player in the world, or one of them, and you want a chance to play in America and get paid huge money, yeah, do I think that there'll be players that will absolutely do that? Yeah, of course. But again, getting a player in their prime means that you had to have already seen them playing at a high level in the best environments. And so you might get a player who's maybe, like getting Lionel Messi at the end of his career, maybe getting Messi in the middle of his career, right? Getting a Ronaldo in the middle of his career, not at the end, right? Going to Saudi Arabia was not something that he would have done 10 years ago. He would have stayed like he did at Real Madrid, right? He would have stayed there, played through that, and then ultimately made a decision to go someplace else. But had the money been a real thing, then maybe he would have made it. I don't know. But again, the world has changed dramatically in regards to soccer over the years, and I feel like that the MLS has such a large gap to try to fill that it would be insurmountable and very difficult to surpass a Premier League or a league like the Premier League.
Yeah, and it comes back to what I think Alexi Lalas was saying when we had him on the show, and I thought he made a good point, but, lifting some of those restrictions on MLS squads, and it comes back to the business of it, right? Because we look across the American landscape when it comes to business tactics and practices, and one of the leagues where sometimes parity, now, mind you, in the last handful of years, it's been far different, but one of the leagues where sometimes it's hard to come by parity is the National Basketball Association, because they have a soft cap. You're allowed to go over that cap and really bring in a lot of top talented players and not really get all that hurt. Now, you look at OKC, obviously they're into the second apron now. It's far different, right? Like the squad that they have is a squad that they have. You don't really have any roster mobility whatsoever. But you look at Major League Baseball, there is no cap. I mean, you're allowed to spend as much money as you want on a player and not really get dinged for it. Now, that has allowed certain teams like LA and New York to really separate themselves because they have deeper pockets. Then obviously in the NFL, you have a hard cap. That's a different story. But the MLS has a soft cap, which means that the teams that have the ability and the financial ability to go above and beyond to get a player like a Messi can really create, kind of like these super teams. And I was having a really interesting conversation with someone on TikTok about how he used to have season tickets for MLS games. He was in Seattle. Used to go watch all the Sounders games, used to see all the teams that came into town. And he even mentioned that he doesn't go to the games anymore. He kind of gave up his season ticket package. He has no real interest in going. And it's because of the collection of talent and how it's kind of been to really just a couple of teams in the MLS. And if you want to grow that league, you have to open up, allow these owners to, and again, to use Lawless's terms, just kind of go hog wild. Lift those restrictions. Don't make it a soft cap. Take the cap away and see what they can do with the resources that they have. Because that's the benefit that we have about being a soccer league in the United States, right? Like, we call this the land of the plenty. We got all these different things, all these different resources, stuff like that. And for the top league in like an MLS, and someone even said it before, like some places, like they spent $300 million to get an MLS franchise. Like, there is big money there. And when you talk about athletes, yeah, I mean, you want to play in the best environment, sure, but also at the end of the day, like, you have to make business decisions too. Like, when fans get frustrated when players make money decisions, because we're fans, right? Because we want to see them stay on our team. We want to see them stay here. We want to see them wear our jersey. But I have never dealt with a contract that is $1 million, let alone multi-millions of dollars. I've never seen that before in my life. I've never seen that amount of money in my life. So I don't know how I would handle it. But when it comes down to it, you have to do what's best for you, financially speaking, all of those other things. And so when we talk about the MLS, I think it would be important. I think it would be something that would be, if anything else, if anything, just an interesting experiment to see if you lifted that soft cap, right? If you went to no cap, you can spend as much as you want. Does that create a situation to where these clubs and these owners can really take this to the next level and show everybody, like, not only do we have the money to be competitive with somewhere like the Premier League and somewhere like these other leagues to where we can offer you this amount of money, but can we attract more talent to come play in the league? Like, it not just on the downturn of their career, not just be what really in a lot of ways feels like, again, like a AAA team, like they got guys who are kind of washed out. They also have young players who are just trying to take that step towards getting to Europe. If you lift these restrictions when it comes to that side of the game, the money side, does that attract more of those top end athletes to want to come to the United States earlier in their career than later? That's my question. I think maybe some of the business tactics when it comes to the MLS, revising and revitalizing some of those would be enough to at least attract more. But like I said, do we think it'll ever catch up? No. I mean, I think for boys soccer players, I mean, you even see it. I saw it this weekend. I mean, I saw 2 Everton jerseys, like little kids wearing, jerseys of teams in the Premier League. That's where their heads are right now. They want to be a part of that. So I don't think we'll ever, and I think it's okay to say that we'll never actually truly catch up, but you want to try and shorten that gap a little bit. And that's why it's discouraging to see like what happened to Inter Miami. Like that was especially the other 2 MLS teams really didn't offer much in the way of resistance. That was like our team. We wanted to see them actually do something, but it's a harsh lesson to learn in the way that we did, but we ain't there.
Just goes to show you need 11 players to win a soccer game. Not just 1 or 2. And I want to, as we kind of segue into U.S. men's national team talk here, again, me growing up, I did not have access to the Premier League in the way in which we do now, right? And so I think it's important. The player today has more access to the international game and the international leagues than ever before. And again, if you are talking about like watch parties and I don't know if and again, if you're talking about inside the city of where an MLS team might be, but I can't think of like on Saturday mornings where, everyone's getting excited to go watch, the LA Galaxy and they're at the pub. They're at the pub having a watch party with all their jerseys on. You know what I mean? But what do you hear about every single Saturday and Sunday across this country? These watch parties to go watch Man U, Arsenal, watching Liverpool, watching the Premier League on Saturday mornings. What are you doing? You're going to there's a bar here called the Dog and Pony Show. I think out in like Ferndale, Oak Park area. That people are sitting there watching soccer games at 8, 9 o'clock in the morning. That is not something that people get excited about to go watch the MLS. Now, I'm again outside of the city in which those games currently take place, and they might have watch parties. I would not put that in the same ballpark. Okay, people aren't getting up at 8 o'clock on a Sunday to go watch Chicago Fire take on, whoever. They're going to watch Man U. They're going to watch Liverpool at a eatery, drink beer, and be amongst all their friends who also happen to be Man U fans.
Yeah.
Right? And so that is what we have right now. That's what you're competing against. And do we want to know why? It's because the news or sports industry, the networks understand it, right? If the networks didn't promote this, like Peacock, Peacock, NBC is like the home of all Premier League games right now. It's like you can go to Peacock, watch all these games. You're telling me that they're doing this because they think that the MLS is the best league? You know what I mean? Like, no. They're doing this because that's where the money's at. Right? That's what they're doing it for.
Yep.
And it's like I wouldn't call it bait and switch. They're like legitimately saying that the Premier League is a better league. And they're offering up, and again, what are restaurants doing? The restaurants are recognizing that there are these games that take place at 9 o'clock in the morning on Saturday and Sundays, and they can open their bar up, and so you can come in and have a drink and have brunch and watch soccer and get crazy about it, which, again, does not happen. It does not happen in any other bar or restaurant in this country because MLS games don't take place at 9 o'clock in the morning. And then more importantly, do you think people over in England are like getting at their pubs and are watching the MLS games? Who thinks that they're doing that at 9 o'clock at night in a pub someplace in England watching MLS soccer? They're probably like your dad was last night. We've got what? We've got cricket or MLS? Cricket, MLS, cricket, MLS.
Right.
Oh, this is interesting. Let's watch some of this. Oh, nope, cricket. Back to cricket it goes. It's like, I mean, come on. I mean, like putting that in perspective. That's why I say when it comes to players like Messi, it's really gimmicky. All we're doing is we're taking a dart, a very expensive dart, with money attached to it, throwing it to a board, and we're hoping that a whole bunch of people chase after it. Maybe even we're strapping it to the back of a dog down a racetrack, and we're trying to get us all to chase after that. But when the dog finally beats us and we can't catch the dog because we're never going to catch it, we're still left empty-handed. And that's what bringing Messi over is for us. We're all at the end of it. Messi, when he goes, the MLS will still be here. It'll be without Messi. And how many of those fans actually become fans of MLS? Fans of LA Galaxy and stick and become a lifetime fan of that team? And my answer is extremely small. Extremely small. No different than why, dude, I needed someone to explain this to me. I was watching a TikTok video, and it was Vin Diesel, right? The lead character in Dom in Fast and Furious this weekend, okay? And they went out on some stage in LA, and they were talking about the new Fast and Furious Part 2 finale, okay? And he stood up there on stage, and he said there were three things. When the studio came to me, there were three things that I said that have to happen. The first one is we're bringing it back to LA for the final. Back to LA. The second one is that we have to get back to our roots of the cars, back to that. We're not going to go to space anymore. We're not going to, do these crazy. We're not going to. Okay. And the third one is Brian O'Connor is being reunited with Dom. Those three things have to happen. I'm sitting there going, but Paul is dead. And no offense to Paul Walker. Brian is gone.
Right.
How do you reunite? Why? And everyone's, oh my God, this is the greatest thing ever. Oh my God, this is great. Why is it the greatest thing ever? Why? Because it's an emotional thing. It's emotional. We want him back.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we want to see. Well, I mean, I don't want him back. I think that's weird. But I mean, clearly the fans want him back,
Right.
even though he's gone.
Right.
Like he doesn't exist anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like, so the perfect thing. It's a gimmick. What are they going to do? What are we going to do to get him back in? Oh my God, we're going to take his brother who looks kind of like him. We're going to put him in the movie, and then we're going to CGI some stuff and make his voice, and yeah, we're going to like AI this thing. But why? Because it's gimmicky. It's all geared towards getting people into the theaters. And you know what's going to happen? I'm going to go.
You're gonna go.
I'm gonna go watch it.
Yes.
I'm gonna go. Bianca's gonna go watch. We're gonna drag. We're gonna go in there. We're gonna make it a date night. We're gonna get some steaks. We're gonna go eat some food, and we're gonna go watch this movie. And at the end of it, we're gonna go, damn, that was terrible. Just like the last time I watched just like the last one. I'm like, what, dude? They're in space. Dude, come on, man. I mean, they sent Tyrese to space. Like, no, it's like Messi. Yeah, it's like that's the equivalent of Messi in the MLS.
So
they sent Messi
to space, is what you're saying. That'll get us over the hump right there. You know what I mean?
Like, yeah, let's have Elon Musk send Team Mars. Let's go to Team Mars. Have an MLS side on Mars. That's going to get us over the Premier League right there. That gimmick alone.
Off the world so quickly too.
Oh my gosh!
Messi up to space. No.
Absolutely. Until all the teams realize they have to go into some hibernation for 6 months before they even get there. But anyways, let's dive into this U.S. men's national team talk. They won yesterday in penalties. They went into it tied 2-2. They won 4-3 on kicks. Matt Freese, right? Goalkeeper Freese, right? This guy is. I mean, talk about dog. Talk about coming out. Now, granted, the conversation about whether or not he's made his way there. First things first, if a goalkeeper can, in those environments, stand up and excel in that environment, it doesn't necessarily mean it's an indication of how well they're going to do somewhere else. The PK environment is a very difficult one to manage, and as a former goalkeeper, I can tell you this, that just because I was really good at making saves in a penalty shootout situation doesn't mean that I'm a great goalkeeper. Okay, I think it's important to acknowledge that. Okay, there are some shortcomings in Matt Freese's games, and I think I'm saying its first name's Matt. I hope I didn't. I mean, because there's Matt Turner too, so it's like we have two Matts, so it's like. But anyways, it's not an indication that you're going to be the greatest goalkeeper ever. It does show that you can stand, you can handle some pressure, which is really, really important. And I think we can argue that Costa Rica, and this is the thing too about penalty shootouts, is that have changed since in my day. It wasn't so much in my day about like deception as it was about placement. In today's world, it's deception. In today's world, you are just trying to go up there, and whatever the goalkeeper is doing, you're going to try and just send it someplace else. And so it's no longer about putting it in the right spot as it is about putting it where the goalkeeper is not. And you saw that last night, right? I think it was a second save where they kicked it right down the middle. Like Matt never left his line; he never moved. He's just kind of held line and the ball right at him. And had he actually dove one way or the other, would have gone in an open net. Right, and so the penalty shootout scenario completely different than it's ever been. All right, and I would encourage players to get back to placement and placing the shot in places where the goalkeeper can't get it, versus just trying to do what you're doing, but you're gifting goalkeeper saves when you do that. And but Matt did a great job last night. My issue is this: why is Berhalter's son on Team USA?
Because he's good enough to be on Team USA.
Is he?
What are you asking?
But is he?
He had an assist in our 1-0.
But I'm saying it. But is he? But is he good enough? You're telling me right now in the United States of America. You're telling me in the United States of America, there's not a better player than Berhalter's son that could be on that team?
I don't know what point you're trying to make. I mean, he
assisted. Well, first off, he missed a penalty last night, right? So yes, he had an assist. He stood up, missed, and they show Greg Berhalter up in the, they show it on TV. There's Greg Berhalter not happy. I wouldn't call happy or whatever, but son didn't make the PK. I'm just curious. how we take the coach, the former coach of Team USA, and he's no longer coaching, and now his son is on the squad. Again, I'm asking this question, and it has nothing to do with nepotism. I want to make that clear. It has nothing to do with nepotism. But you're going to sit here and tell me that there is not a better, and this is why we will never win a World Cup. Okay? This is the reason. Why is he there? I need someone to explain to me why Greg Berhalter's son is on Team USA right now. I need to know why his son is on this team. And more importantly, in the 11. Again, because if you're telling me he's the best player, fine. If he is one of the best players in the country, not the world, but in the USA, you're telling me he is one of the best players in the country.
If he
I would love.
He produces.
Yeah. Okay. Fair.
That's the other side of it. It's weird. I'm not going to say it's not weird, but I would also say that I like the willingness of him to go out and sacrifice everything, much like the rest of this young group, even despite the fact that his dad's not in that position. Did I think it was sudden? Do I think it was obviously last year with, Pochettino's been struggling for the longest time to figure out who he can trust or what 11 he can trust or what group will mesh. And I feel like finally in this Gold Cup, at least to a certain extent, he's found that. Now, mind you, they have 2 more games. Like, it's not over yet. So I think it's important for everyone to keep in mind, like, this is not over yet. They still have a lot to prove. But it'd be one thing if he wasn't out there producing. It'd be one thing if he wasn't out there making a difference. But when you assist on the only goal against that Saudi Arabian team to keep this undefeated streak alive, he's producing. So, I mean, yeah, I think it's easy to say, yeah, there might be someone who's, quote, more talented out there, like question why he's on the team. But if he's producing, then he's doing his job. Yeah. So it's odd that maybe to your point, but I guess
I don't know if even odd the right word. But when we start talking about herein lies the problem. Herein lies the problem with what we do in this country. Here lies the problem. Yes, okay, he got an assist. Great. He got called up here to be part of the Gold Cup. His first time, by the way, ever being called up. Right? So first time being called up, plays for the Vancouver Whitecaps. I get it. But again, I'm looking here and saying, is he in fact one of the best players in the country? And does he in fact give us the best chance to win soccer games? And again, that's an opinion-based type thing, so you can absolutely interject your opinion into that conversation. But when we start talking about player recognition, identifying talent, identifying the right players in this country, we have a coach that coached us for the World Cup, again, got fired over a whole bunch of nonsense. And while that should not affect his son's ability to make teams, I don't want that to fall on the shoulders of the son, but we're talking about less than a year removed from being the head coach of this program, and his son's being called in during, granted, there were some players that would normally be on the roster that aren't, Weston McKennie, Christian Pulisic, right? It just seems odd. And again, this is what our problem is, identifying players. If he is, in fact, the best player to fill that role, absolutely, no doubt about it. But I would argue that that's not the case. I would argue that there's probably a lot. Huh?
Who's better in that spot?
Who's better in that spot?
Yeah.
I don't know. There's probably 35 more players that are better than that player. Again, for every one player who is currently playing in the MLS who is at the highest level, there's probably 3 players who could play that role as well, but just weren't given a good look. I would argue that there's probably 2 or 3 players who are not playing in the MLS right now that are good enough to be there. And again, for whatever reason, it could have been because they didn't get seen. It could be because they pissed somebody off along the way. It could be a lot of things. I'm not talking about Premier League because Premier League is different, right? Premier League, there's not like 3 players for every team. The best players are playing over in Europe. You want to know why? Because they were playing. They came up in the academy programs there. I argue that there are many players in this country of over 340 million people that will never see the light of day on a soccer field at the professional ranks because of things that maybe they haven't been seen. They piss somebody off, the political aspect of soccer, because the politics in soccer is terrible. We're looking at it. The politics of soccer. You're telling me that somewhere in that whole thing, that when Berhalter's getting tossed, how was your? Again, just thinking about that, it just seems weird, especially with the Reyna situation. Like the Gio Reyna situation, like that in itself, like you got Claudio Reyna and Berhalter, and you got Reyna and now his son Berhalter. It just seems like a weird kind of like, I don't know, it just seems weird. So I'm just curious the dynamic of that too. It just seems cancerous as well. I don't know. It just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. We saw it with Bob Bradley too and Michael Bradley, right? Michael Bradley was already on the team though at that time. So I only brought it up, Nate, because we talk about what's wrong with the U.S. men's national team. And this is it. Because
they're winning.
Okay, great. They're winning against subpar team.
They had one of the best goalkeepers in the world. JT.
Who?
Costa Rica.
Yeah, sure, great. Okay. Yeah, great. We talk about that all day long. We can argue all day long about who they're playing against. Costa Rica is nothing to. Again, we can argue all day long, huh?
I get that, but it's a high pressure elimination game. Like that they have to embrace that moment. They could have rolled over and died, but they didn't.
Who's could have rolled over and died? I'm not debating the win. What I'm saying is that, again, this is what in here lies the problem with the team and with our mentality here in the United States. Great, we went out and beat Costa Rica in a penalty shootout, right? Congratulations. We're moving on to the semifinals, okay? And we're doing it with players that were not on this team before, and we're seeing some great things out of them. I'm not disputing that. But it's not a signature win. It's just a win. In a kind of, and again, we talk about it, in a kind of roundabout way, meaningless tournament. The Gold Cup is meaningless in the whole scheme of things. I don't care about the Gold Cup. And to be fair, I don't care about this roster right now as much as I care about what's going to happen here in less than 11 months. We're 11 months away from a World Cup, and we're talking about how they beat Costa Rica in a penalty shootout in which the backup goalkeeper, who we didn't know much about up until like 3 weeks ago, is stepped in and made 3 penalty shootout saves. And that's great. But how does that correlate to us winning something here in 11 months? It doesn't. And I'm talking about Greg Berhalter's son. And why is he on and is he even going to have a chance being on the squad in 11 months? And is Greg Berhalter's son going to give us a chance to win anything in 11 months? And the answer to that question, I don't know. My gut says no. I don't want to be like the rainy day parade of U.S. men's national team, Nathan, but the reality is we're 11 months away from a World Cup. And if you're going to sit here and tell me that the way we played this tournament is putting us in a position to be competitive in that environment in less than a year? Now, what does this show us? That we have some players that can work hard? Great, that's what we've been looking for. But you and I both know those aren't the players that are going to be on the field. Pochettino is not going to go out there in 11 months with players that are on that field that are working their asses off. They're trying to get themselves there. It'll be Pulisic, it'll be McKinney, it'll be all the Reyna. It'll be those players. And have those players shown us on any level that they have that same kind of grit? I mean, and as a coach, can you really go into a World Cup and not have Pulisic on your roster? No, you can't. You're not going to have Reyna on your roster? I mean, maybe. I guess that depends. We've seen that kind of happen, but that didn't end well for a coach. Right? So what are we going to see here in 11 months that makes me feel good about this? And so that's why this tournament means nothing. Now, maybe 2 years ago it means something. Be in between World Cup and, whatever. But right now it means nothing because, they go out and win this thing. Who'd they beat? We're not seeing the best players in our country right now. We're seeing a combination of in-betweeners. What are we going to see? So that's the part that, if I look at this for the Gold Cup for what it is, absolutely it's great. You're going on great. But I'm looking at it in the bigger picture of things, and I don't know how this correlates. I don't know how this win yesterday pushes the needle. Looks like, well, okay, great. Great. We won in a penalty shootout to Costa Rica. Great. What does that look like in 11 months? And I don't know if I put my thumb on it, but for me, it's not a positive. It's not like, wow. Right? It doesn't look, I don't look at it that way. I'm looking purely in the sense of, especially in these moments too, right, where you want players to step up and just and play and not, you want to obviously see every penalty shot go in, but that's not a reality. I don't know. I'm torn on this outcome last night. To be fair, I think the U.S. men's national team losing is better for them than winning right now. And that sounds terrible because right now them losing, it puts them under more pressure. And the more pressure you're under, you're going to either you're going to figure it out, or you're going to break. And we need them to get to a breaking point, or we need them to figure it out. And right now we're in this in between kind of weird stage where you just don't know what you're going to get game in and game out. Are you going to get a good team? Are you going to get a crappy team? What are you going to get? And so that's the part. We're in this weird stage, and we're 11 months away from a World Cup, and we don't know what we have. That's the part that bothers me.
Yeah. I hear you.
I just stopped talking so you could talk. I hear you. Great. That sounds like my wife. I can hear you. Yeah, I may ignore you, but I
physically hear you.
I'm glad you can hear me. We'll talk more about this, obviously,
right.
But I don't want to be the rainy day, negative, whatever. I'm just pointing out this fact that here we are right now. We're under 12 months away from a World Cup on U.S. soil, and we're winning a penalty shootout with a backup goalkeeper. We didn't know who it was. Now having a debate about whether this is a goalkeeper to be on our roster next year, with players who wouldn't normally be on the field, and we're excited about it. I mean that to me is the part. Okay, what are we excited about? Will Berhalter be on the field in 11 months? Again, that's why I'm even saying this. If you're telling me that he's got a chance of being on this roster in 11 months and he is one of the best players in the country, okay. That's the part about this. The whole thing that gets me is that the identification of talent in this country, is something we've talked about, is terrible. And when you put people who are in those positions, who know people, who, again, you're going to sit here and tell me that if Pochettino's sitting in that room right now and he's got, the president of U.S. Soccer and general managers all over here and they're all talking and they're like, well, Greg Berhalter's, son, Berhalter's on that list of top players.
Mm-hmm.
You're telling me that he's not going to get a different look than the player they haven't seen before or that they just heard about? No, Berhalter's name is going to carry some weight because of his dad.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yep.
And so herein lies the problem. You put Berhalter against 10 other players, who's going to get the nod? Well, chances are Berhalter's son is, and it's because of the name.
Mm-hmm.
Like Reyna, right? We can argue that Reyna is a great player, but is Reyna the best player? Are there other players out there? I would argue that I've seen a lot of really good players over the years who I think could match up very, very well in these environments, but for some reason, they're not getting the looks. And they're not getting the looks because there's a Reyna, there's a Berhalter, there's a Bradley, there's somebody else who someone knows.
Mm-hmm.
And that in itself creates problems. Do you think that happens across the pond? Do you think that really truly happens everywhere else?
I think there's nepotism in every league in the world.
I know, but I mean, again, thinking about thinking about where those countries are at right now,
mm-hmm.
do you really think that the pressure that we are under, to be fair, is not even close to the pressure that Brazil's under? They are expected to win. We are not expected to win. We are underdogs, right? So the pressure really isn't on our shoulders. When we go out and play soccer games against other countries, they're expected to beat us. I mean, for the most part, because we're U.S.
Mm-hmm.
You're talking about England and U.S. play each other, that England's not feeling the pressure to go out and beat U.S., that the U.S. is under pressure to go beat England. No, the U.S. is under pressure within themselves to go out and compete, but they're not under pressure to beat teams. That's not – they're not expected to do that, right? It's completely different. And so when you're in that situation, I don't think you can afford, like if you're England, to bring in a player who you'd happen to know. No, you bring in the best players regardless of who they are because you need to win. It's life and death. It's, that's how that works. And so that's why I feel like that we're behind the eight ball in that regard. But another conversation for another day. Anyways, that wraps up episode number 111. We will not be here tomorrow. Nathan is going to be on location someplace doing something fun. I'm going to the water park tomorrow. At least that's the plan. weather permitting.
Right.
Going to go dive, go down a water slide, and get burnt. We're going to maybe have some crappy food. That's tomorrow. But we will not be here tomorrow. All right, so come back Wednesday for more Inside the Game. When we hop in at episode 112, we'll continue to talk about U.S. men's national team. We'll talk more about what's going on with the network and a whole lot more. But that's Nate Wengler. I'm Jonathan Turner. Episode 111 in the books. Inside the Game. Subscribe, like us, share this with your friends and family. Come back each and every day except tomorrow as we got this on Wednesday at 9 a.m. And we will not be here on Friday either because it's July the 4th. So may the 4th be with you on Friday. But either way, be back at it Wednesday, 9 a.m. right here on Inside the Game.